I do think it's important to point out that the shit that they're getting, the stuff that Black people are supposedly being given, is not what has been the request of people who are actually marching. And I mean, as I wrote in that piece you mentioned, I fundamentally support and have to feel morally bound to support this movement. The movement has not asked to recast cartoon characters with other people's, with people of color's voices. They haven't asked to change Aunt Jemima. They haven't asked for Goldman Sachs to change its language policies, right? They've asked for things like ending the carceral state, right? Vastly reducing the prison population and ending the prison industrial complex. The culture responds with all this symbolic junk that doesn't really add up to much.
Okay.
I mean, look, I'm not at all hung up on the Washington Redskins being the Washington Redskins anymore. I mean, I think it's probably a good thing for the team name to change. I mean, it's literally Redskins,
Sure.
But I also know that that is the kind of thing that our culture and our society gives when it is unwilling to give the actual structural change, right?
Yeah.
And so these things dominate headlines, and they create a feeling of forward momentum when in fact there is very little to show so far for these protests. I mean, it looks like Minneapolis is going to make some really serious, deep police reform, and I think that's a great thing. But beyond that, it's really hard to identify anything that has actually happened as a result of these protests that is not, people using their Instagram to talk about white supremacy,
Right. So you're making me rethink my position on this whole stuff, because I've just been so turned off by so much of it. Until just recently, when I sort of said, I think on Twitter, in fact, I said, hey, look, it's not just Minneapolis. We have cities all over the country that are doing radical reforms of their police departments. I mean, unheard of stuff that shocks even me. I mean, and it's dozens, maybe scores of cities across the country I've heard about, and talking about serious stuff, instead, like ending in Berkeley, where I live in Oakland now, but like in Berkeley, the current proposal is to end all traffic stops by police. I mean, yikes. But then again, I'm just like, I'm open to, I want to hear about this. Let's do this. Cause I'm basically a police abolitionist. We need to talk more seriously about what that's going to look like. And I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I definitely want to start that conversation. And you're right. I wasn't giving enough credit, I think, to the non-looting, non-idiot, sadistic, violent rioters. It was the vast majority of people in the streets, I'm sure, were not that. And that's what they were calling for. This is undoubtedly true. They said abolish police very clearly over and over again. So yeah, I guess we do need to give them a lot of credit for that. And we actually are entering a really important, probably radical shift in criminal justice in this country, which you and I and many, many, many other people for years and years and years have been screaming about, and no one was listening to us. So I got to say, even as messy and disgusting and horrible and dumb as so many of these protests have been in the last several weeks, that's what's going to come out of it,
Yeah, look, you go to war with I used to say in the anti-war movement.
You're about to quote Rumsfeld.
Rumsfeld. Well, so when people would talk about, in college, I was really deeply involved in anti-Iraq war activism, and I sort of turned that back around, and I used to say, because people would always say, why are there so many weirdos in the anti-war movement? Why are so many of the people so frivolous? Why aren't they serious? Why aren't they studying the way we're studying? And I would say you go to peace with the army you have, not the army you wish you had, right?
You go to peace, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's true here. It's like any movement that has sufficient people to be called a mass movement. In other words, any movement with enough people to actually get the juice to make some change, there's going to be so many weirdos, you're going to have people showing up with the sign about, take the fluoride out of the water, whatever. You're always going to have people who are there who latch onto one weird thing, and you're always going to have flakes. And yes, you're always going to have people who, just want to break shit because that's cool. That's just inevitable. And that's, And that was certainly true in the anti-Vietnam War movement was uh, absolutely correct,
Yep.
deeply influential, and vindicated by history.
Yep.
But also, there were so many fucking flakes in that movement. There were
Sure.
so many people who were weirdos and whatever. So
Including my parents, I will say. So I know
yeah.
very well. Yeah.
And so I think like you have to be a little bit forgiving of the appearance of the movement from the outside, because it's the people who are the weirdos are the ones who stick out.
Yeah, no, that's good. I'm really glad I'm having this conversation with you, because I've just been so soured by it, and I never participated in it. I just stood back during this stuff recently and just was so grossed out by it. But I mean, in 2014, 2015, 2016, when that was the top issue, I mean, man, I was ripped apart like so many people were about what we saw in those videos, right?